Singing a song when the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing. When the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing. When the red, red robin comes bob, bob, bobbing along.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members. Hello and welcome to the Robin Pod Weekly. And joining me tonight is a Robin Pod regular and a man who loves nothing better than speaking about Leeds. Welcome to the Robin Pod, James Purling and Statman Rhys, formerly known as the Lot Pod Statman Rhys. Rhys, before I bring James in, a seismic transfer from the Lot Pod to a new podcast. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so obviously I've had a great time at the Lot Pod and I took it as I was helped out as far as I wanted to go, but it felt the right time to move on. And fortunately, I have set up Real Class Rugby League. The brainchild of it is a guy called Rob Conlon, and effectively it is a blog and also a weekly podcast. And the essential question of the mantra of what we are is, we think that rugby league has concentrated on what the sport is doing wrong, and it always has that negative connotation, whereas we're here to celebrate what it's doing right. Now, not to say that on a podcast we will throw some jabs that now and then if a team's done something stupid, like Wigan having an 18th man. But at the main part, we're going to have a podcast each week reviewing every round of Super League and talk about the latest discussion points, and then there'll also be a blog that comes out every week with a new piece of writing. So recently we had a blog about one of our colleagues that went over to Bradford to watch the Bradford versus 𝗂𝗃𝗃 game in pre-season. There's a bit of a blog about the Rhino, but it's going to be about the stories that celebrate rugby league and why it's so great.
Rhys, is it true that you basically just got sick of talking about Leeds? Is that what it was? And you had to branch out?
It has been hard work for the last 2 years. It has certainly been hard work. Remember me and Eddie would sometimes just before a podcast would start, we go, how do we think of a positive for this? Because we'd always do, let's name some positives. And we'd just sit there for 5 minutes going, yeah, well, there isn't many. But I do think there's more positives now. And hopefully for Eddie, he'll have plenty of positives to talk about this season.
Yeah, and we're going to come on to that because we've got lots to talk about in this week's episode of the Robin Pod Weekly. Of course, Super League kicks off on Thursday when Wigan and Leigh go head-to-head. We're going to preview, talk about Super League in general, the runners and riders, who might be the top, who might be the bottom, who might be in between. Of course, we're going to talk about the Robins and their game against Castleford Tigers on Friday night, which is, of course, the main event in Super League. How can we not mention that? But let's kick off with the Challenge Cup, Rhys and James. James, great to see you back on the Robin Pod. It's been a long off season, hasn't it? There's been lots happening. Amsterdam Challenge, pre-season, Tenerife, new signings, comings and goings. Are you glad to be back talking about Super League and the upcoming season?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I was saying to Jan on Friday night, it's just 16 weeks since the grand final. Just sort of flown by, fortunately. So, but now got something more to look forward to than just endlessly watching telly and doing other stuff. So can't wait.
Doing your daily chores. Well, apologies for anyone who was expecting to listen to the Robin Pod last week. Unfortunately, I had to celebrate my 40th birthday. I also had to go to work. So things like this do get in the way when you're recording the Robin Pod. But it's great to hear so many people get in touch and ask when's the next one coming out. And here we are at the start of the season. But let's kick off, Rhys, with the Challenge Cup. I will admit, hand on heart, I was totally against the new format. I thought it'd lead to injuries. I thought it'd lead to cricket score lines. I just thought it would detract from all the positives that has happened in rugby league in terms of being a competitive game. I just thought it was just something that didn't need to be done. And I am so pleased to be proved wrong, because I think the last round of the Challenge Cup was exactly what the people who created it thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I was really pleased to see your tweet, actually, that you'd turned around, because I'm hoping that you weren't the only person that has flipped how they felt about it. I think there was an article that came out last week in The Guardian, like even before the round of fixture had been played, which was the revamp hadn't gone to plan. Clubs are still losing money hosting, and the supposed magic is scarce in the ground. And that article quite pissed me off, because that article had been written and published before even any of the fixtures that had been played.
Right.
And you look at the positives that came out of it, and we talked about it actually in our pod, but, you know, obviously West Warriors played over at Headingley. Leeds paid for travel and accommodation, which meant West got a bigger payday. And in terms of the result, West's played Widnes last year in round 3 in the same round and lost 80 points to 4. So it's not too dissimilar in terms of the change of the tournament. You know, Midlands got a record crowd 4 days before kickoffs. It was guaranteed 4 days before the kickoff. York Knights, obviously, where you guys played, I think, was it 5,600 they had? You know, a record crowd for them. We got an upset, or not much of an upset, because I actually favoured Bradford to win, but Bradford beat Cass. You know, Derek Beaumont donating Leeds share the money to Workington. Whitehaven, 3,980 crowd. But I actually thought the story of the weekend was what happened at KR. Did you, I mean, I don't know if you guys went, and I think you did go, Chris, but like, unprecedented. Like, over 5,000 people reported. I mean, that is the best story of the entire weekend, but that's exactly what the Challenge Cup's about. I mean, that payday, imagine how much of a difference that's made to West Hull.
Yeah. And I think as well, Rhys, from that game, as much, the biggest talking point probably is the crowd. For me, James, was the competitive nature of the fixture. The fact that a NCL side went toe-to-toe with one of the most successful sides in rugby league history, and put not only a good account of themselves up there, but actually made a really competitive fixture out of it. And I think that was the real success. And that's where I switched on to go, hang on, actually, there's legs in this. This shouldn't be shelved. This should be made something special of. And coincidentally, you know, in this country, we make a big thing of the FA Cup third round. And if you like your football, I feared that we wouldn't have that because, you know, the chance of a shock in rugby league, because it's a physical natured sport, it's harder than, you know, football in terms of where two teams can compete with the ball and stuff. But what I thought what was really interesting is the respect that was shown, James, from the Super League clubs and the pro clubs to the amateur game. And actually, we've done a great job of bringing it back together, the game back together from its community roots back to professional level.
Yeah, agree. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic performance by West Hull. I think that, you know, the whole occasion, and I think, you know, going there, I thought, yeah, okay, it's going to be potentially going to be a cricket score. I saw the Saints team, and the team Saints put out, yeah, it wasn't shabby. You know, they had Wellesby playing, they had Hurrell. Yeah, it looks a decent team on paper, but like I said, West really took it to them and just never gave up all afternoon. And I thought, just even from the first, I think, second minute when Lewis Murphy, they managed to create an overlap after about the second minute, and they got Lewis Murphy just about to put the ball down, and they got him into touch. And I thought that just epitomised what West was going to be all about. And you thought, okay, maybe, you know, enthusiasm, etc. But it was 4-0 after 30 minutes. You know, and the tackling was absolutely tenacious, and just wouldn't give Saints an inch. And I think they probably were tiring that last 10 minutes of the first half, and that's obviously when they got all the points. But that second half, you thought, okay, they're gonna they're gonna sort of collapse, and you know it's going to be a whitewash. But it wasn't. They just kept going right till the end, and even the last minute they were putting some big hits in, and it was just really, for me, what the cup should be all about. You know, as I say, I'm old enough to have gone back when amateurs did play, you know, regularly in the cup. And I remember going to see Ace Amateurs at Craven Park playing Widnes in 1980. They lost 20 points to 5, but again, they put a fantastic performance in. I think it's just giving the community clubs that opportunity to test themselves against the full professionals. And at the end of the day, no matter whether you're playing Super League or you're playing the Conference League, if you tackle somebody around the leg, they ain't going to go very far. And I think that's what what we're stuck to. That they were tackling was just superb, copybook, around the legs, and saying just snuff them really.
Yeah, and we saw that especially with the tackles on Conrad Hurrell. Rhys, you mentioned that it might not have been the biggest shock, and you predicted it, but we did need a lower league team to beat a team above them from the league above, and the Castleford Bradford game did deliver that.
Yeah, I think that certainly helped the view of the weekend being a really good success. I think if we hadn't had the cup set, it still would have been a very good weekend, but I think that's certainly elevated it. And like James was saying, there's been some strong performances. I mean, Midlands were only 2 points behind Salford at half time. Halifax, I think, held out for about 58 minutes from what was amazing defence against Catalan, and they really struggled to get through them. So I think there's stories there, but I think the cup upset just makes it better. But Bradford's not an easy place to play, and it was a bit weird watching that Bradford side, because it was the Brian Noble side of the past, big outside backs, just one up rugby up the middle, and they knew how to play their pitch, and it wasn't a good look for Cass at all, to be fair, but I wasn't entirely surprised by it, but it was definitely still a cup upset, and I'm quite happy, because that now means the last Super League side to get knocked out by a Championship club is no longer Leeds, because it was obviously us in 2019 at Odsal. So I'm pleased that Cass have taken over that trophy.
Yeah, famous game that, and we'll come on to Cass later on when we do the Super League preview. James, let's focus on the Robins now. I mean, we played York in the Amsterdam Challenge. Obviously, the side that took on York on Friday night was much changed. It was the strongest side available to 𝗬𝗓𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, and you could understand why he did that. He did say prior to the Amsterdam Challenge it'd be two different sides that I'd play. What did you make of the game?
I enjoyed it. I was really impressed with York. I think, obviously watched them when played in the Amsterdam Challenge, saw them against Keighley the previous week. They look a decent championship team. And I think for that first 20-25 minutes, it was a very even game. I think, you've got to sort of say, obviously, from a Rovers perspective, with so many changes and sort of a lot of them playing the first game of the season, they were very rusty. And, say York's probably about third or fourth game. But I thought for the first 30 minutes or so, it was a very competitive game. And just the whole thing was, again, what the cup should be all about. Like I said, a stadium record attendance, and just really a very competitive game, I thought, and just really enjoyed it.
Rhys, I think 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 would have been absolutely delighted when they did the Challenge Cup draw and that they got a championship side. And in terms of the stage of the season, would you preferred, or do you think Brad Arthur would have preferred to play maybe a championship side, bearing in mind it's the week before the start of Super League?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, look, I don't want to take anything away from the really great experience that was playing against West, because it was a really enjoyable afternoon at Headingley. But if you're looking at a test, obviously, week before the Super League season, I think York what's interesting about the Championship this year, I don't think there's a clear and out favourite. I think there's probably 3 or 4 sides in, if London get their act together, but you've got York, Bradford, under the performance they did, Toulouse. There is no clear and out winning the Championship this year. So I think York is about as good a test that you could have had. And, for the first 20, I haven't seen the full game, but from the highlights I watched for the first 20 minutes, they looked to put a really good fight, and they were strong in defence, and they were, they've seen the hit against Jared, or JWH, and that's great. But I think, selfishly before we got the round, I did want to go to a Championship away day. I would have liked York, I would have liked Halifax or something like that. But I still really enjoy the experience against West Warriors. Yeah,
and James, when you look at the test that the Robins encountered against York, it had a little bit of everything, didn't it? Because we saw some good moments in defence. We saw some good moments in attack in terms of slick ball movement. Obviously, the physicality was there from York. I mean, Rhys mentioned the hit on 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗃. You know, welcome to England. That was. But the best thing is, we've got players who actually thrive on that and learn from that, and I think that is an opportunity that we got what we probably wouldn't have got if we'd have played a League One side or a conference side.
No, I think you're right, and I think well, I've lost the train there now. God, it's all gone.
We were talking about York, James.
Old age, yeah, I know you are.
Yeah,
but no, I think it's just the physicality. Yeah, it's just the whole physicality of it. And I think one of the things that I think will have pleased Willie Peters really was given the amount of ball that York had and the pressure they were putting on Rovers inside the 20 on the goal line defence. We didn't concede a try, and that I suppose there was some nervousness that with Delaney going to Cass, that would we be able to maintain that intensity that he did so instilled while he'd been at the club. But I think we saw on Friday night that they have still got that intensity in defence, and it just looked rock solid. Just looked rock solid. There was a lot of pressure put on by York. They tried a few different things, but they weren't going to get through. And that was great to see, and just augurs well for the coming season in the Super League.
Yeah, I mean, Rhys, I suppose that's the test, isn't it? When you're in pre-season, we mentioned the physicality, but in reality, the scores you make are pretty much irrelevant. It's probably how much you don't concede, which becomes a bit more of a telling factor.
Yeah, I think when I'm watching Leeds, I'm wanting to see in pre-season. Obviously, we played Wigan towards the end of the month in Ash Hanley's testimonial, and the main thing I'm really looking for is defensive and attacking structure. Can I see a difference in what we didn't do last year? Are we building on something, and can you see an improvement in the squad? And the score is really irrelevant if you're seeing that better structure, if you're seeing that better defensive. I think for me that's what I want to see. And to be honest, the only reason I go to pre-season games is because I need my fix. When we're about 3 or 4 months without rugby, it's good just to watch it, and it's nice to go without any sort of anxiety of the result and just sort of actually spend time on watching. But for pre-season, for me, like you said, the results are the results. It's about seeing that structure in the first team on the pitch, but it's also a bit of an opportunity to see some of the young players come through as well, which is always quite exciting.
Yeah, James, anybody stand out particularly to you in that Challenge Cup game against York?
Thought Jez Litton was very good when he came on. I think he had a lot of speed, which you knew we know he can do anyway. And sorry to have to say this, Rhys, but I was quite impressed with Rhys Martin as well.
He's going to score a lot of tries on that edge with Martin.
Yeah, he was. Again, he looked good on the edge, and obviously with the added bonus of the goal kicking there. Even he did miss a couple, which will let him off because it was a bit windy on Friday night.
Mikey Lewis missed more kicks than anyone last year, so he should be missing less. Yeah, Rhys's percentage is like 80-odd%, so I wouldn't worry about it too much.
That's why we're all excited. Yeah. When who can score tries, he's just like converting them. So
even if he scored the same amount of tries he did in 2024, if you just put Rhys's kicking on it, you probably would have got the league leadership.
Yeah, probably would have done. Yeah.
All right, Rhys, we don't need to. We don't need a reminder. Thank you.
Bring it up. But no, I thought all round, I thought it was a good solid performance. I thought Tangano for his 10 minutes was good. And the hit he put on, I think 2 or 3 minutes before the end, I thought it was just sort of again just showed the level of intensity that they're putting into defence. I thought I was impressed with Tom Davis, and I think McAlorum, I thought did a decent job. I thought I'd had a bit of a laugh when Tom Davis had his shirt ripped off and McAlorum and Paul McShane was trying to mix it with the Worry Hargreaves and McAlorum. I thought very brave lad. And he got a penalty out of it, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point about, you've just reeled off, 4 or 5 names there. And they're in any team, they would probably be the main leaders. The fact that we've got 4 or 5 of them is really telling for this season. I mean, Rhys, tell us a bit more about Rhys Martin. Obviously, he's very happy about having to make the journey down the M62. You can tell how miserable he is because
he looks it, doesn't he?
Every interview he does, every picture you see of him, you know, he's down in the dumps. He's always got a frown instead of a smile. But no, seriously, tell us about your experience of Rhys Martin and what you think he will bring to the Robins.
Yeah, look, Rhys is a leader. He doesn't need to be captain. You know, I think there was a lot of talk about he should have been captain at Leeds, but he does his leadership on the pitch. You know, in games where we've not been great, Rhys is always the one that is the consistent 7 out of 10, 7 or 8 out of 10 minimum. He runs great lines. He's a strong runner. He works hard in defence, and his kicking is so reliable that you're always quite confident a try is always going to be 6 points. I think any team in Super League would want Rhys Martin in their 13. For someone that's so consistent and good at what they do as a good ball-carrying second row, he's a diamond. You know, Leeds fans were obviously, I think, you know, I look at Leeds players when they leave, and if they go somewhere else and they go to am I upset they go? Obviously, Rhys is probably one of the few in the last couple of years that I was gutted that he was gone. And I'll freely admit, I didn't think he would go to another Super League club. I think that all the talk for us that he'd end up at the Red Dolphins in the NRL, and he's good enough. I think he's good enough to get into a squad down there. But yeah, we're going to miss a big player in Rhys this year, and it's a hole that I don't think we've quite filled at second row in the back row just yet. And I'm really interested to see how we backfill that, or how.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, James, isn't it? Because we've heard stories, obviously, around Warren Hargreaves being best mates with Sean Kenny-Dowell, Mickey McAloram's best mates with Tyrone May. You know, some of the players, obviously, then you got Davis who's coming from Cattle. So there's connections all over. We've not really heard about how Rhys Martin has landed in East Hull, because he could have quite easily, like Rhys said, gone to the NRL. He could have stayed at Leeds, to be fair, because with Brad Arthur coming in and a renewed challenge, there was that opportunity to be reinvigorated and to go again. So we've not heard the backstory of how it's turned up, but for me, I mentioned it on the Robin pod that we did last time, that he's probably, for me, the player that I'm most excited to see. And I was just thinking about what Rhys was saying, what you said, James, and I liken him to a Kane Lynette type of player, but that next level up in terms of ability. Take away his kicking, you know, separate that, but he's just his consistency. What's really interesting for me as well, James, is his lines that he runs. You know, and like Rhys said about how Mikey Lewis threads that ball through to him. You know, the best thing about these second rowers is them lines. You know, that they just seem to pick up on. And I honestly, I think he's going to be a huge threat. Let alone his kicking, I think he's going to be a big point scorer next season.
Yeah, I think he will. I think the one thing that's impressed me when I seen him playing for Leeds was actually his speed. Because obviously, you know, he plays mainly second row, but he has obviously slotted in at centre. And that, for me, that's just something that probably people haven't really appreciated as an added bonus of getting him. You know, I think people are focused on the goal kicking, but as Rhys said, you know, you can tell he's a leader. He was obviously, you know, Leeds' best, most consistent player last season. And yeah, I think we said, didn't we, last year when it was announced that there's a feeling that signing Rhys Martin was like the missing piece in the jigsaw. You know, just, you know, it's something that's going to overcome our Achilles heel, the goal kicking as well.
Rhys,
somebody can score tries and speed and run those lines and just, you know, consistent week in, week out.
Yeah, understandably, Rhys, a lot of Robins supporters are looking at Martin potentially as playing the centre as well. What experience have you had of him playing there?
He covered centre loads at Leeds. You know, when we had injuries, I think in 2023, I think he played majority of the season actually in centre, which probably alludes to his threat on the edge. You know, he scored, I think, 10 tries in 24, 10 tries in 23, and 11 tries in 2022. So, you know, he is that second row centre, and it shows his ability as a runner. So he can fill in at centre should you ever need him to. But he is an out and out. His best position is second row, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And what you get with him as well, obviously on that edge as well, is that we'll talk about his kicking from the tee. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. There's also plenty of clips of Rhys kicking in open play and creating opportunities for wingers, centres, and sometimes even for himself, which again is just that extra bit of threat that he adds.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. We can't wait to see how he goes. If we look at Super League in general, before we preview, obviously, the Rovers game against Castleford on Friday night, are we expecting, Rhys, do you think, a better Super League? Because last year, some teams, you could point the finger and say there was treading water. The new IMG grading left them open to being able to do things that they probably wouldn't have done. Do you think there's more vulnerability now and teams can't do what they did last year?
I think I almost put the Super League into 3 different groups now. And one standalone team, actually, I think. I think you've got 3 teams at the bottom that could finish 10th, 11th, 12th in any order. In probably Castleford, Huddersfield and Hull FC. I think any of those could finish 10th, 11th, 12th in any order. I think 𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗃 will be too good to be in a relegation scrap, but I just don't think they'll push toward the playoffs. I don't think they're a Leigh of 2023. I look at Leigh's squad in 23 versus Wakefield. I just don't think they're as strong, but I think they'll be well clear of a relegation. And I think pretty much from 3rd to 8th, it could be anyone's game. I've underestimated Salford probably for the last 5 or 6 years, and I've only been right once when they finished 11th in 22, I think. So you can never write Salford off despite the issues that they've had. Leigh, I'm not quite sure. They've had a lot of change, but they've still got great players in there and a good coach. But I just think that Wigan are just Wigan. The reason why they've not made any signings is because they probably don't need to. They're just very good, aren't they? Yeah. And I mean, obviously, you guys know, obviously from last year, they're a very good side, and they are the team to beat. And I think there's probably 2 or 3 teams that could challenge it. One team that's probably more favourable, probably out of the 3 to challenge that to Wigan. But yeah, I think it's still a very competitive Super League, but more competitive in that 3rd to 8th bracket, where I think any of the 4 of the 6 teams could finish in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I suppose the aim is not to be more competitive downwards. It's supposed to be competitive up.
Be clear of the pack. If you're clear of the pack, you don't have to worry about anyone else, do you?
Yeah, James. I'll tell you what. Let's hone in on some teams, some clubs. Sorry, because one side that's really surprised me because they've made probably one of the biggest signings in the off season is Huddersfield. Obviously, Badge is coming back to the UK, but the fact that they've loaned Richardson from Rovers already for a 2-week spell, which could be extended on a game-by-game basis, they seem to have a hell lot of trouble. And when you look at not just the position that they're in after pre-season, but the recruitment doesn't look great. Just there's not much positives coming from Huddersfield. Not just the planes, everything moving to Halifax, potentially buying bloody Halifax's stadium to put a new pitch in before then building a new stadium somewhere else. It's just, I don't know, they look a bit of a mess. Yeah, they do. I mean, for me, I think they're going to get the wooden spoon. I don't think the recruitment's been great. I think, they signed Tom Burgess, but how old is he now? 34, 35. I know we've signed Murray Hargreaves. Wait, whoa, don't be mentioning ages on here. But I don't know. It just seems like they're putting all their eggs in the Tom Burgess basket. And like I said, they've lost like Masters, who could score a few tries for them. And like I said, the noises coming out of pre-season are not great. They've obviously lost George King with a freak injury in training for a while. And for me, if you're already having to sign players on loan at this stage of the season, then you've got a few problems going on. And I don't think when Luke Robinson took over the back end of last season, I know it's like a bit of a struggle for them, but I don't think they didn't really get that new coach bounce and didn't really see anything with Luke Robinson coming in that would say to me, oh, they're going to change and they're going to progress. No, I've got them down as wooden spoonies. Yeah, Rhys. I mean, if this was football, I'd have Robinson down to be one of the first coaches or our favourites to be sacked because I just cannot. But rugby league works a little bit differently. But when I look, like I've said, the recruitment, etc., there's just not much joy there, is there? There's no excitement. There's not even any sort of like I don't know, almost going, yeah, I know we haven't done great, but get excited. It's just everything about Huddersfield is flat, apart from actually going to Huddersfield, which is hills and everything else. Yeah.
I mean, I have them 12th in my prediction table as well, so I'm the same as James in that one. You know, I'm assuming Burgess is a quota, not a quota spot, whatever you call it,
marquee.
Thank you. A marquee spot, and you know, I think Burgess still played. I think 25 times last year for South. You know, if he's still fit, he'll still play. But I look at the other recruitment elsewhere, and looking at 13, they've obviously had injuries as well, which is why Danny Richardson's had to come across. If they get injuries, I'm really struggling to see a strong 17. And this is no disrespect to Luke Robinson, because obviously I think he's obviously a good coach. But if one of the reasons you're hiring a coach in general is that they know the club, I'm already getting alarm bells. Yeah. Because it's I just think, I mean, Ian Watson needed to go because obviously what he was spouting in the media last year was just absolutely bizarre. But I think Huddersfield are on a downward trend, unfortunately. I think they finished out of the last 3 or 4 years. 3 out of the last 4 years they finished 9th. I think they're doing incredibly well to finish 9th this year.
Yeah, James Wakefield. I mean, you look at their recruitment; they have the benefit of being able to recruit early, and obviously they brought in some really top quality players. It is still, though, as well. Don't forget a championship squad in a lot of ways. Although they brought in Mike Staunton from Hull Kingston Rovers, I suppose they're the ones where people are not quite sure what will come out of there, because there's no doubt that off-field they had to make improvements, not just the stadium, but just the infrastructure on the club, about how they brought investment in and everything else. They seem to have got a handle on that, and there's been then added investment into the squad. I'd say they're a safe bet not to be relegated, but you know, it only probably takes a few injuries to a couple of their key players, and then the squad then looks a little bit bare again.
Yeah, it does. And I think they're going to be one of the surprise teams of the season.
Oh, really?
I'm not going to say they're going to get to the playoffs, but I look at the recruitment they brought in. I think, I've always rated McMeekin, obviously Tom Johnson. It'd be interesting how Tom Johnson goes going back to them. They always say you shouldn't going back somewhere. So it'd be interesting how he gets on. I'm still gutted Mike Staunton left Rovers and has gone to Wakefield, because I think he was always a top performer for us. I think they're going to be. I reckon they'd finish probably about 8th or 9th. I think they're going to surprise a few teams. It won't be easy going to Wakefield. I think obviously our first away games at Wakefield, and I'm not looking forward to that one job, because I think they'll have to be fired up with it being their first home game back in Super League. So I think they'll ruffle a few feathers this season. Like I said, they're not going to get into the playoffs, I don't think, but I think they'll certainly finish about 8th or 9th.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Rhys? They look a safe bet, don't they, to remain in Super League?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think they're. I don't think they'll make a threat to the playoffs, but I also don't think they'll be a threat anywhere near relegation. Yeah. This side is better, way better than they had in 23 when they went down. And in terms of the opposite of Huddersfield, these guys are on a positive trajectory. The stadium is looking far better than it ever did. It looks fantastic now. Yeah. There's more improvements to come. They're doing a lot on the off the pitch as well, and the fans are really behind it as well. There's a vibe back at Wakefield now. There's excitement in there. They've already sold out the initial allocation to come to Leeds on Saturday, so we've given them more. So we're expecting about 1,200, maybe a bit more. So they're excited about it, and I think what's interesting about Wakefield's recruitment is last year they did a lot of overseas signings, and this year they've only signed one. So, and they're focused on bringing some of those English players back, and probably local players. I mean, Tom Johnston, if he was fit every year, it'd probably be one of the best wingers in Super League. I still have nightmares of him running the length of the pitch against Leeds on numerous occasions. He's a fantastic player, and if you get a full season out of Tom Johnson, it's almost 20 tries guaranteed from him minimum. He's a good player. Mike Meakin's experience. We were really shocked, by the way, in the pod the week we did. He's 30. I feel like Mike Meakin's been around for bloody years.
Yeah. I think there's lots of players in Super League who are playing, and actually we've got no idea how old they are.
Yeah,
you've got
Mike Meakin was like 35, and I'm like, I looked at his age, like he's 30.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think they're on a positive trajectory, and I think I think Wakefield will be looking forward to it. They'll pick up some wins, surprising wins this year. They'll probably lose games they expect to lose, but I think they'll be ninth.
Yeah, that leads me on to Rhys, and I'll stick with you. Salford. On the face of it, it's been a complete car crash in terms of their pre-season, whether they're going to be able to compete, whether they're going to be able to fulfill a season, whether they've got the finances in place. The players seem quite chilled out and relaxed about it. There was at one point talk of fire sales and players must be sold and players must be get rid of. They've got to get rid of 800k off their salary cap, and it's all going to be quiet, which is probably a bit unnerving for people because that doesn't necessarily mean that it's solved, especially on the eve, well, pretty much the eve of the start of the season. So, when you buy a rugby league club or you're buying a business, these are not easy transactions. They're longer than just a week's. But when you look at the playing squad, they're still, if they keep them together, it's not half bad.
No, there's plenty of quality there and players that have played together for a long time with a coach that's probably been there. I don't know how long Paul Rowley's been there now, but he must be one of the longest serving coaches in Super League now. There'll be a siege mentality there. Salford have always managed to, yes, whether they call themselves the little guys or not, they've always had one of the lowest budgets and they've always batted above the weight. So it's nothing new to them to have a siege mentality. Obviously, it may be even greater this year. But their weakness is they've not been able to add any more quality in the last couple of months. And you look at, obviously, it's really hard to find signings at the beginning of the season other than maybe emergency loans. So are they stuck with the squad now for the year? Can they add to it during the season? With now they've been taken over investment. But as I said before, I've constantly underestimated Salford and I've been proven wrong on a numerous amount of occasions. So, I had them 8th in my table, and I'll probably be wrong again. But it'll be interesting to see because they probably, I imagine, have the lowest budget in Super League this year.
Well, I'll tell you what though, what surprised me, Rhys, is the fact when they talked about how they had to reduce the salary cap, how much there was spending at. So there was already one of the, spending close to their cap, and you're looking at it going, wow, we always thought they would be well under it because of the finances of the club, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And hang on, so then you start pointing, well, where is that money being spent on? Who's taking that money out?
Who knows? Who knows what those balance sheets say? There's the money that the fans put in. Wasn't there as well? Where did that go? We know where the RFL's advance went because they went to Tenerife or wherever they went on pre-season.
Portugal,
thank you. Look, it's how a club manages itself is their own decision, and but as a fan of a team, you never want to see your team in that position. So I'm hopeful for Salford fans that they're never in that position again. Because if it was Leeds, or I imagine if you guys, when you were at KR, you'd never want to see your club in that period of unsureness. So I'm hoping it's the end of it, because I do think there's a market for Salford. I don't enjoy playing against them, because we've lost against them a couple of times in recent years, and like I said, we've underestimated them. But hopefully this is the back of it for them. Yeah,
it's almost like Ian Blease could foresee what was coming.
Yeah, you do wonder, don't you? You do wonder. Although he didn't help them out because we bought Croft and Ackers whilst he was there, and then obviously he came across to us, which I find bizarre. He's a heck of a man. He's a massive loss to Salford.
Well, we're going to come on to Leeds very soon, Rhys, before you start blowing smoke.
You caught me then, didn't you? Halfway.
yeah. Before you get into full flow, James, where do you think Salford finishing?
I'm like Rhys. I've underestimated him in the past. I think last year I had him down as finishing 11th. This year, I think I'm probably going to be 7th or something like that, 7th or 8th. I think it's going to be hard. It's a horrible place to go, Salford. I hate going as a fan. It's just like, can you imagine it was like playing there. So I think they're going to be tough to beat at home, and it's probably going to be the way form. That's probably going to be they're hold them back a bit. But no, I
think Paul Rowley said last year they'd be lucky to finish above 11th, and they finished 4th or 5th.
I know. It's just like I mean that was just kidology, I think, and that's what I thought. I think because they seemed to go through the same thing last year, didn't they? Where it was all turmoil and the smallest budget, and they only had 19 players or something like that signed, and I think I don't know what Paul Rowley. It just seems to be able to get a tune out of his squad, even when it was he's a bit Lee. And so it was transfer as well, wasn't he? But no, I think there'll be tough nuts to crack again.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that lot. There's one team that I prefer not to talk about, James, but let's just leave it on the point that they can't be as bad as last year, can they? And to be fair, I understand. I don't, we poke fun, but I understand the recruitment process where they've gone from. I suppose what's amusing is that they've gone from trying not to be bottom to being a couple of places above, and that's probably where their recruitment has been. Yeah,
I think it is. If you look at the players they brought in, if they wouldn't instill me great confidence.
Right, let's leave them there. So let's move on to bigger clubs. Then we start talking about potential playoff places, who's going to finish in the top 6, who might miss out. Let's go to Catalan, Rhys, because they've been a little bit, the recruitment's a little bit all over the place. You're not quite sure in terms of where they are with some of the native players. They've brought in great quality, haven't they? When you look at some of the attacking flair that I've got, the fact that Sam Tompkins is back, and it's quite ironic because I saw one media report saying that he looks fitter than ever. He's in the best possible shape, and then he goes and plays Halifax and comes off in the first half and he's injured, and you're like, maybe that's why he retired in the first place. That there's something in that. Whether it's the same injury, maybe that's just my simple brain putting 2 and 2 together. But I don't know. I'm not that excited about Catalans anymore. They used to be like a side that he was excited about, and you used to think, they were the challengers. For me, they've gone down a grade in the last couple of years.
Yeah, do I agree? I'm not sure. They always tend to lose some big players, and they're always able to bring some big names back in. But I look at some of the players they brought in. I mean, there is a bit of a retirement joke going on there, because obviously Sam Tompkins retired, has come back. 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗏 Jr. retired to go to boxing, and he ended up coming back. And obviously there was talk about 𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗃 retiring at one point, but I don't think he actually officially retired. I can't remember. But 𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗃 is an excellent half. If you get the quality of the player that he is, he could really marshal them around.
And Catalan have done well getting players at that, especially in that position.
Yeah.
Just another.
Have you been to Perpignan? Because it's a lovely place in the summer.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's much better than any advertisement you could do for any English club is going, do you fancy coming and getting a load of money in Perpignan? But I think Steve McNamara, I mean, I don't like Steve McNamara because his sides are horrible to play against. And I think, he won't be happy with a not in the playoffs last year. I think they are a playoff side, but it's their away form that lets them down and let them down considerably last year. And I think that's probably going to have to be their big focus. I think they've replaced well. I'm not too sure about Sam Tompkins. I think they've got a great fullback in Artur Morg, obviously, who's rumoured to be joining you guys next year. I don't know if it's been confirmed, I can't remember. But I think he's a great fullback, and I didn't think you really need Tompkins back from there. And they've always got a good pack. So I think they are a playoff side because they're so tough to beat at home. But it's just that away form that Catalan need to sort out.
Well, if Catalans are a playoff side, James, where do you see Leeds Rhinos?
I think they'll be knocking on the door again, the playoffs. Probably, 5th or 6th.
Really? That high up?
Yeah.
You sent me a text earlier saying you thought you had them 5th.
No, I'll tell you, my top 7 was
I have to get your text up.
Wigan, Rovers, Wyatt, Lee, Saints, Catalan, Leeds.
I thought you said 5th to me earlier.
I think they'll pick Catalan.
No,
I think,
no, you did say 6th. You're wrong. Sorry, I'm wrong. You did say 6th.
I don't know. I think they will pick Catalan. You know,
I just think, Rhys, and you'll give me the Leeds opinion that, and you know, I respect that. I just think there's a hell of a lot of pressure on the fact that a new coach is going to just change everything round with the recruitment not necessarily matching that level of ambition. Because as the recruit, do you think the recruitment's been good for Leeds this year?
I think it's been good with the limits of the salary cap that we've had. No, the big issue that we had was the pack. You know, I think any team would want more props and more props and more props on their side, but we did not have a good enough pack, and it's something we've been screaming for. And you know, 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗴𝗏 has been great from what I've seen in pre-season so far. He's almost a perfect match with 𝗂𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗁 in that 𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗁 can carry that workload in attack, and 𝗂𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏 in defence can take that weight and take that workload because he puts some phenomenal hits in. He works incredibly hard in defence, and he can run with the ball. Cooper Jenkins is obviously was a high rising star in Australia. That yes, he hasn't played NRL grade. I think he won the New South Wales Cup, and there's a lot of teams that are after him from there. And from what I've seen of him so far, he's just a robot. He just wants to pick up the ball and run with it and run in hard. So I think, you know, the pack is significantly bigger. Holroyd should be like a new season player for us in the pack as well, because obviously he missed most of last year with concussion, and he's bigger. He looks absolutely massive compared to last year. So recruitment-wise, the pack is bigger. Obviously, Jake Connor is a bizarre one for me. When he first signed, I was not very keen, and I've watched him in these pre-season games, and I'm just like, there is such a good player in there, and you can see it. And if you can get the best out of that Jake Connor from what we've seen, I generally think, you know, take back to 2022, he got 31 assists for Huddersfield that year. Oh, Hull, sorry. I think it was Hull FC, he got. So I think Jake Connor's versatility and being out, and we've already had to see it. You know, Miller's been injured, so Jake Connor's filling in at fullback. We've lost 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏 for the season, which I think is a big loss to Super League, and not just us. But that means we've got that versatility. We've got enough depth in the back line to be a bit more versatile than we had been. But the main signing is Brad Arthur. Keeping Brad Arthur for 2025. You guys won't have had the advantage really of seeing the Spirit of the Rhino documentary unless you paid for it, which I would find very bizarre if you did. But that level of experience from the NRL, the coaching ability that he brings, the effect that he has on this squad already, but also from what he'll have this year, will be bigger than any signing.
Yeah, it's interesting because what that alludes to is that basically you had a good squad and Rowan Smith just couldn't get the best out of them.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Brad Arthur lit up the world when he came in last year, because, you know, we still lost games and we still got battered towards the end of the season. But with that, you know, even just things like, you know, small things, we didn't make the playoffs, he brought them in for a week and a half to show them this is how hard it's going to be. If you want to be here, get fit, work hard off the off season, and it's just the little things like that. How he's set up a computer room so everyone and he wants people to be watching video, and it's going to be opposite his office, so he's going to be seeing who's going in and who's doing that sort of work. You know, it's just these little things that make it that extra bit professional and that extra mile really that Leeds need. But I'm not saying that the squad under Rowan Smith was a championship winning side, because I don't think it was. But he should certainly played. He should have been higher than Rowan Smith was getting out of them.
And Ryan Hall's back.
Ryan Hall. You just
the
timeless, the ageless Ryan Hall.
Yeah. What have you seen him in pre-season? What have you made of him? There's a lot of eyes on him, isn't there?
He looks as fit as ever, doesn't he? Like, I mean, he's probably lost a little bit of pace. I mean, obviously, you guys have enjoyed watching him for the last 2, 3, 4 years. It was a bit weird to see him back at Leeds, to be honest, because it's you know, I think it was 2018 that he left Leeds, or somewhere around that, or maybe even before that. But he looks as fit as ever. He looks like he could play another year, if not more. and you'll slot back into that side, and you'll add. What was a shame with losing Sevo was we had two massive wingers that you could kick to in the corner or run out from deep. But Ryan, as you guys know, his ability to carry from deep and put you on the front foot from that returning set, it makes a massive difference, more than sometimes the tries that you score.
Yeah, James, I mean, just finishing on Leeds, but Ryan Hall, he started doing, like, physically, there's no question whatsoever. He's in peak physique, isn't he? I mean, who wouldn't want to look like Ryan Hall? He's 37. Who wouldn't want to look like Ryan Hall? But I noticed with him last season, James, that he started making some weird play, like he'd pass it on his line, or he'd come out with these offloads, or he'd pass it, and you could see him getting frustrated. And I think that's what was creeping into his game. That just these, I don't know, these decisions he was making where it cost the team. He'd give a penalty away. Physically, he'd just run and run and run. But I think there was a few too many errors coming into his game where you go, I don't know, maybe his time's done. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're. I think offensively running the ball out. There was nobody to compare, and I think it was just fantastic to see. But I think, like I said, there's a few defensive lapses as well that he had to come shooting out the line and conceded a try from the back of it, and then I suppose it's inevitable. And I think as we watched the Warrington playoff semi-final the other night, and when he dropped that ball with nobody on him with about 5 minutes to go, and gave 10,500 Rovers fans heart attack. And I think I think he realised that.
That's the errors that he wouldn't have done.
No, exactly. 5, 10.
He was. I think he was fourth in the error chart in Super last year. Yeah, so I will give you that. He's always shot out the line though, as Ryan Hall. He's always shot out the line to make that tackle.
But the only problem is when
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, I tell you what, let's come on to someone who I'm not that really excited about, and that's St Helens. I don't think, Rhys, that when you look at their recruitment, you look at what they did last year, obviously they've had a change in the backroom staff, Eamon O'Carroll coming in, Lee Breers. I'm still not really that excited about St Helens, and I think there's almost a push to say that just maybe through arrogance that St Helens will be better and they will be challenging, but from what they've done, I don't see it.
I think the best signings Lee Breers, to be honest. Saints have been in the playoffs. They always are.
Well, I don't think they'll be. I don't think they'll be in the playoffs.
They're never not in it. So they've never done what we've done at Leeds, which is fall out of it and stuff. They will be up there. I mean, Lewis Murphy, when he played for Wakefield in that year he emerged, was outstanding. Obviously, he didn't get his game time in Australia because of injury, but he looks a bit of a bigger player, and if they can get that quality out of him, he can be a good player. I'm a bit confused by.
Well, I just on Lewis Murphy, you're gonna have to see how pleased he was to be back. The way he celebrated his try against MTL side.
He loved it, didn't he? He absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
But then Tristan Saylor, obviously giving him the 6 shirt, and I don't know about you two, but I just don't expect to see Tristan Saylor at 6. I'm more likely think you'll find Jack Wellesby is in the halves and he'll be at fullback. And then Kyle Felt, 10, 12, 13 years experience in the NRL, still played 25 games last year and got on 20 odd tries. I think people are sleeping a bit on Kyle Felt. I think he'll score tries, and I think he's a good replacement to Tommy Makinson. But I think the interesting thing will be Paul Wellens, because from the outside looking in, from what you see on Twitter, there's a lot of disgruntlement, or there is disgruntlement towards him, and I think it's going to be a big year for Wellens. I think
what's James is it happens in sport, not just rugby league. It happens in every sport. Sometimes you just go through a cycle where you just don't get the right crop of players. Your recruitment from overseas is decent, but that doesn't necessarily match up to the players you got at home. And Saints have been able to enjoy is having so many young players come up into that first team, then be able to cherry pick some of the best players from the NRL. And they're just not in that cycle at the moment. And I think it'll take them 3 or 4 years they will be back because Super League's so small, they cannot not be back, and the resources and support that they've got, they will be back. I just think they're going through a bit of a spell now where things just don't align for them in terms of the recruit. Like Rhys said about Tristan Saylor, there's nothing, there's nothing that I saw against him for him against West Hull where I thought, wow, he's head and above. Don't get me wrong, it's pre-season. There's where we are now to where we are in 6 months' time is completely different. But like I said, I just think they're a bit not excited.
Yeah, they don't probably instill that sort of fear that you probably had of years gone by of thinking, I've got Saints up next this year. I think you look at it thinking, I've got Saints. Oh yeah, we should be okay here. It will be interesting about Wellens and whether he stays this last season. And I think it's going back to what you said earlier, Rhys, about Huddersfield appointed Luke Robinson because he knew the club. I think it's just probably the same with Wellens. He's been there. He's been part of the furniture for so long at Saints that it probably felt as though it was a natural thing for him. And I don't think, like I say, looking on social media, the Saints fans don't be particularly excited or enamoured with him as Milt. And I can imagine if things don't start very well for them, there will be a lot of pressure on the back of it, on his back. And he could potentially be the first one to go.
Feels a bit Rowan Smithy, actually. The pressure was on Rowan Smith last year. If he didn't perform, you could have easily thought that he was one of the first coaches to go. And I think I don't know what Saints' first few games are like, but if they're not up there, you can see the I can see the crowd voicing their concern.
Yeah, and they got Salford, haven't they, on Saturday?
Yeah,
and they got Salford,
which is not a gimme.
Exactly.
What we talked about in terms of Salford. Oh no, that could literally be, that could be anything, couldn't it? One side that really interests me, Rhys, is Leigh, because do you know what? They've set a really good blueprint about getting promoted from the Championship and having stability, signing some good quality players, but trusting in your coach and obviously winning silverware helps the Challenge Cup. And they've not been afraid to turn over some players. Obviously, Moylan going is big for them, whether they've replaced him or not. But Leigh, you've got, I don't know, the ingredients to do something special again. I think they finished fourth last year. Got into the obviously playoffs, lost to Wigan. I expect them to be there or thereabouts. Not necessarily winning, but there or thereabouts in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they're probably one of the best positive stories of Super League in the last sort of decade or so. In the coming from the Championship, finishing fifth in 23, fifth again last year, Challenge Cup in the first year back. They've kept great players like Lachlan Lamb, who was obviously last year was well publicised that there was teams going after him. They've had probably the second, after Wakefield, probably the second biggest turnover of players this year, though. And they've got a lot of, they've lost some old players in, your Johno and Zach Hardacre. And they've brought some experience back in. I just still don't think they've replaced Matt Moylan. And I think I think Gareth O'Brien's got the 6th shirt this year, which I think's probably, I think my concern for Leigh is that have they replaced him sufficiently? I think they've replaced Johnny Aziata with Isaac Louis pretty well. Tessie New at centre. They've made some really good signings. But when you've got that turnover of players, can you keep that flow? You've got a pretty, there's a new spine in there in David Armstrong, or half your spine's new. Or say new, Gareth O'Brien at halfback, but new in terms of that structure. So, and I think, Derek Beaumont was talking incredibly highly about David Armstrong and his pace. So I'm really intrigued to see, because I'm going to admit I've never seen him really play. So I'm really intrigued to see what he's like. But it's a difficult game for them to kick off the season. Wigan derby, 20,000 plus fans over at Wigan. Yeah. I think Leigh are probably one of the best additions to Super League we've had in recent years.
Yeah, James. Derek Beaumont will be pleased. A certain club not that far away from us has probably done a massive favour in terms of recruitment and taking players off his hands. In terms of, like Rhys said, turnover of players, but Leigh definitely look like they're here to stay, not here just to stay, but here to actually kick on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they go this season. Just purely because of the turnover of players that they've had. I think, so they've lost lost or sort of shipped out quite a lot of experience. So whether this season going to be more of a transition for them, I still think there probably will be there or thereabouts for the playoffs and be as incredibly tough to beat as they have been the last sort of few seasons when they've been back in Super League. But yeah, it'd just be interesting how they do go with the turnover that they've had. I think we've at Rovers, in the past we've had quite a big turnover of players, and it's taken a few weeks for them to gel, etc. And potentially by then you're playing catch up. But then they were in the same situation last year, weren't they? When they had quite a few injuries at the beginning of the season, and then they were playing catch up, and they managed to get to the playoff semi-finals. So yeah, it'd be interesting how they go. Like I say, I'm interested in how this David Armstrong as well. Don't know a lot about him at all. Just what Derek Beaumont's been talking about. So I'm very interested to see how he goes.
Yeah, and Rhys, I mean, Warrington, look at them. Many people thought Burgess coming in, it was, I don't know, a bit of a vanity project. It was probably something that was destined to fail. And actually, he's done a pretty good job in his first season, hasn't he? He seems to be a good leader of the club. He says the right things, his personality, in terms of how he comes across when he does his interviews and what he says, and obviously what he's done with that playing squad. Warrington this time around, are you expecting them to be even better or stay where they was?
I think they'll stay where they are, roughly. They've not had a big movement in recruitment. And whilst I'm a bit hypocritical on this, because I'll say about Wigan, they didn't need to make any replacements. They were good enough. Warrington, I'm not sure whether they could have made certain additions, but I think they could have made or should have made the odd two. I think obviously half-back was probably the big one. They're trusting Leon Hayes at 7. I think Leon Hayes is a great player. But is he that player that then takes that team another step forward into 2025? I'm not sure. I think Ollie Leyland's a fantastic player that they've signed from London, and I think there's going to be really big competition to who's going to partner George Williams this year between Leon Hayes and Ollie Leyland. But I just don't think they've made a necessary step to go any higher than they did last year.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it, James, about tried and tested half-back partnerships. When you're at the top level, when you're taking a punt on who might work and who might not, especially when you consider that the age of a couple of the players, Haynes, for example, they're not tried and tested, are they? So it's a bit of a punt, but they're obviously, like the shot against Rovers last season, it was so close coming down to the end of the season. Are you fearful of Warrington that they could go better than us this year?
I am and I aren't. I think, Haynes, like says, is a really good young player. He's really unlucky last year getting a broken leg, and I think he's injured again already this season. So I think Leyland's going to be playing from the off. Really rate Ollie Leyland. But yeah, I think they've set themselves a standard last season, an unexpected standard, and I think it's going to be harder for them to sort of to continue at that level, that sort of level. People, they're not. People, other clubs know about them now. They know what they're all about. So I think they'll be better prepared. And because they haven't had that sort of, great influx of players coming in or to sort of freshen up or sort of help take them to that next level. Yeah, it will. I think it will just be interesting how they do get on. I think how they start the season is going to be key for them. If they get a good start and get some momentum going, I think they'll be there or thereabouts. But if they're losing a few to start off with, then I think they'll sort of drop out. I think one of the somebody in the press put them out not even making the playoffs this season.
Wow,
I think that's daft. I mean, look at last year. Yes, I'm saying they've not signed people to take the team forward, but they scored the most points in Super League last year. And they conceded the least amount. They're not a bad side.
No, they're not. We know full well. They were one of the only 2 teams came to Craven Park last season and won, and they were one of them.
Yeah. So if Burgess can maintain that level of performance, they're going to be in the top 4.
Yeah, and all you say is it's not like the other sides have then significantly bolstered their squads either to go, hang on, these are way above. Yeah, no. So I think that's ridiculous. I mean, Rhys, very briefly, you don't need to do much talking about them because we all know what they do. They're a machine. The recruitment has been minimal, to say the least. Wigan Warriors, are they still the benchmark?
Absolutely. How can you not be a benchmark when you've got all 4 trophies?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's really any more to say about them. They've got all 4. They've got them for a reason. They are the benchmark to beat.
And James, Wigan, when you look at them, they're formidable, aren't they?
The team to beat.
I'll tell you what, one of the biggest stories in rugby league that's gone under the radar is 𝗀𝗧𝗏𝗂𝗧 working for Chelsea.
Yeah.
Well, it came out yesterday, didn't it?
Yeah, well, but what I'm saying is, when was the last time a rugby league player or literally retired and went and worked for a professional Premier League football side in a senior position? So it's staggering. But no, Wigan Warriors, you'd imagine, James, if you finish above Wigan, you're pretty much nailed on for the league leader shield.
You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? No, they are the benchmark. I think every club needs to aspire to. You just think, you look at the team, and like Bevan French, and you can just, we know what he can do. And something like 𝗪𝗓𝗲𝗄𝗏, who I thought had a really quiet season last season, but he's again one player who can just turn it on when he wants to. They're going to be the benchmark again, and I can certainly see them being running out at Old Trafford in October again.
Yeah, moving on to Friday's game against Castleford. Rhys, Castleford Tigers, coached by obviously an ex-Leeds Rhinos legend, assisted by another one. They've not had the best pre-season, have they?
No, and I'm always going to speak very kindly about Maguire and Delaney. Obviously, there's 2 Leeds legends, but I do think they've got some work to do this year, as proven by the Challenge Cup at the weekend. But I think anyone would be naive to think that you'd see the same level of performance again at the weekend. They would have had a bollocking and a half at half-time and full-time, and probably in training this week. They've obviously tried to address it in terms of signings. If they get them in time or not, they may not. I'm not saying it's going to be a remarkable improvement from as in a massive different side, but I don't think you're going to see. I certainly hope not to see the side that we saw against Bradford, the performance against Bradford at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, James, I appreciate what Rhys is saying about we won't see the same side, but I think when I look at Castleford squad, they are beyond words. The players are literally the players. They don't, if you're still being led around by Liam Watts, Joe Westerman, players who are hobbling around the pitch with more, who look like mummies because they've got that money padding on it, and I don't know. I just think, look, what Cass are trying to do, I understand, because they've concentrated last year really on IMG points and make it stabilise in their position in Super League. I think they probably took the eye off the ball a little bit, and I think they'll admit that in terms of the playing side. But I don't see then anything else for this season that's really significantly added to the quality of that side. And I think they are reliant on the Papua New Guinea signings, the being able to do something with them. I mean, playing Tex Hoy at fullback for most of pre-season and then putting him into the halves. And I fear for Castleford because I just think that their squad, their first team squad, their best squad isn't good enough, let alone any injuries. And I've got no fear whatsoever on Friday about what the Robins will do, because I see York side potentially being stronger than what this Cass side was.
Yeah. I must admit, when the fixtures first came out, and I think it was about a few days after it had been announced, Delaney had left Rovers and gone to Cass. I thought, it's going to be a tough one, that, just because of Maguire being coach, Delaney's getting the defence sorted out. But just from what I've seen sort of pre-season and so on Sunday against Bradford, I'm thinking, they are going to struggle. And for me, I would not be surprised if they finish 11th this season.
Yeah, and James, when you look at the Rovers squad, are you expecting the same side to line up against Castleford as did against York on Friday?
Yeah, I see no reason why I'd want to change it unless there's any injuries that we don't know about. And I think there was a few players seem to be hobbling around towards the end of the game, but I just been sort of stiffness with it being the first game. But yeah, I can't see why I would want to change that squad.
Yeah, and what was interesting as well for me, James, was Jack Brown being 18th man.
Yeah,
obviously captain the side over for the Amsterdam Challenge.
And he looked good as well, didn't he? He looked good as well.
Yeah, he looked very good. He looked very strong, athletic. It's almost like he'd had a 6 months of proper training.
Yeah, I know. That's what we said last season. I was a bit undecided when they signed him, but I said, give him pre-season, proper pre-season, and we'll see how I'm going. I think he will be good for us this season if he can get into the 17.
Yeah, and Rhys obviously Leeds open their season up this weekend. We've already talked about Leeds, what we expect from them, but what you expecting them specifically from them this weekend?
A win, first and foremost.
You expecting a win?
Yeah, hang on. Expecting is probably the wrong word. But I will predict them to win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. You know, Wakefield first game back in Super League, they're going to be well up for it. Good travelling fans that are coming across. It's not going to be a repeat of Boxing Day, which was very easy for Leeds. But if I see the improvement that I've seen from Leeds over pre-season, and we actually see that in a competitive game, Leeds will win by probably 1 to 12 points. They will be in that sort of bracket. But you can't underestimate Wakefield because, I've done it a number of times and they've beaten us ahead of me before now. So you can't underestimate them, respect them. But I'm just hoping to see that combination of the spine working well, and hopefully a nice afternoon on Saturday, because I do love a Saturday afternoon kickoff. I quite enjoy it. It means you can get in the pub for 1 o'clock, enjoy it, and have a full day enjoying rugby league, which is great.
I used to like the James the 5:30 kickoffs on a Saturday. They were my favourite ones. I think. they were the best ones where you could you had a full Saturday where you could just enjoy the rugby. There's not that many of them now, is there? Unless you're playing Catalans. They were my favourite kickoff times. But no, look, it's promising to be a really exciting season of Super League rugby. It's certainly going to be competitive in certain aspects. And the Robins, I cannot wait to get back in that East stand, James. That much maligned Craven Park, the one that's like a patchwork of stands. I cannot wait to be back there. Of course, so Sky Sports' favourite Super League ground, don't forget that. That is well documented. Huge thanks, Rhys, and to you, James. We're going to finish with a new feature. So people who listened to the Robin pod last season will remember Robins Remembered, and that's when Steve Till came on to talk about former players and his memories of them, and gave us some facts and figures on what they achieved while wearing the famous red and white of Hull Kingston Rovers. It's changed this season. Steve is recounting famous games that the Robins have played in. So to finish this week's Robin Pod Weekly, please welcome Steve Till talking about Hull Kingston Rovers' first ever game in Super League. Welcome to the Robin Pod Weekly, the first time in 2025. It's great to have you back. And people who remember last season's Robin Pod, we introduced a new feature, which was Robins Remembered. A slight change this season because instead of players, we're going to remember games from the past. And you're going to take us through that, Steve. So what's the first game you've got for us?
It's got to be our debut in Super League, which happened 18 years ago this week when we played Wakefield Trinity in our first ever Super League match. And what a match it was, a tight and frantic, I guess the word is, as far as Rovers are concerned. Rovers began the game in fine style by when John Goddard put Scott Morell over for a try after 3 minutes. And that try was converted by Gareth Morton, but we never scored another try until 2 minutes from the end. And in between time, there was a lot of tension. between the teams. Wakefield, of course, had just managed to avoid relegation the season before, so it was the promoted team in Rovers against the team that had been fighting against relegation in the 2006 season. And so it was going to be a tight tussle. And so it proved, because after Scott Morrell scored in the 3rd minute, Sam Hobbs, the Wakefield hooker, he went over soon after. And suddenly the scores were level at 6-6. And then there was a lot of toing and throwing. There was a lot of throwing of punches. 3 players were sin bins. 𝗵𝗂𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃 was our man. And there was one stage there were 12 players in one team and 11 in the other. But the tension was palpable, and play went to and fro. There was a lot of needle in the game, and it looked as though after Rooney had kicked a penalty and dropped a goal in the 72nd minute, it looked as though Rovers' first outing in Super League was going to be in defeat. But then came a tremendous climax when, with 2 minutes to go, it looked like Rovers was setting up for a drop goal to level the scores. But instead, James Webster put a beautiful pass into Chris Chester, who ran on, turned inside, and there was 𝗵𝗂𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃 to put the ball down, and Rovers fans were in raptures. There were 7,100 at the game, and the stadium exploded with Rovers winning by 14 points to 9.
Yeah, and Steve, if you was at the game or people watching it on TV, they'll have seen them sheer scenes of jubilation, and I think for many people it was celebrations out of relief. The fact that we had finally arrived and back in the Super League, for many people, probably didn't think that day would come, but here we was, and we was good value for that victory. Yeah, we were, and we won our next game as well. In fact, out of the first 5 games, we won 4 of them, and including victory over Wigan and Huddersfield. It was the prelude for something that we thought was big, but then we fell away a little bit and lost 5 games on the trot before we beat our near neighbours, but not in Hull, in Cardiff. And so it was an auspicious start. Then we kind of flopped away a little bit in the middle of the season, but eventually that first match, in a sense, gave us success in Super League and kept us in Super League, because those 2 points were vital in our quest to keep that position. Yeah, 18 years ago, God, you're aging a lot of people now, Stephen. And for some people who probably weren't around then, or might be listening to the Robin Pod for the first time, who were the standout players in that game for you? Do you know, there's a man who's connected with Rovers now, Danny Ward. He played fantastically well. Chris Chester, another one who had an absolutely brilliant game. But James Webster controlled everything, dictated everything that Rovers did. Everything went through James Webster and his half-back partner, Scott Morrell. So they kind of laid the platform for the rest of the team. The forwards got on top of the Wakefield 6. And to be honest, if it had been a draw, it might not have been a bad result in terms of fairness, but we managed to nick it. There were people like Gareth Morton, his kicking, he's a name that's well remembered from our days in the lower division. John Goddard played well. It was 𝗂𝗂𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, he played in the game. It was a really excellent match, and tight, taut, but we got the victory in the end. Yeah, and I think that's really worth mentioning, Steve, the fact that there was a good number of players who had seen the Robins gain promotion and then retain their place in that side for that Super League opening game. And I think they definitely deserve to have that opportunity. Yeah, I just missed that last bit there, Chris, but actually, while we're talking, I'm actually in Scotland while we're talking. I'm on a train, or I was on a train that's broken down. So you'll have to, anybody who's listening to this or watching this will have to bear with us on this one. But I just lost you for a second. Yeah, great dedication to the Robin Pod, Steve. Great memories that you'll be evoking for lots of people listening and watching on YouTube of the Robins from that game against Wakefield, 18 years ago. And we look forward, Steve, to you bringing us other famous games throughout the Robins history.
We'll try and do.
Singing a song. When the red robin comes bobbing, when the red robin comes bobbing, when the red robin comes bobbing along.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members.